There is something happening inside your body tonight, while you sleep, that your doctor has almost certainly never tested for. Not because they don't care about you, not because the science is new or experimental, but because the appointment you had last month, the one where the nurse wrapped the cuff around your arm at 2 in the afternoon and smiled at the number on the screen, was never designed to catch it. Now here is what most people don't know, and what changes everything. Your blood pressure reading at 2 in the afternoon is not your real blood pressure. Your real blood pressure is what is happening inside your arteries at 3 in the morning, while you are unconscious, while your heart is supposed to be resting, while your body is supposed to be repairing itself from the damage of the day. And for roughly half of all seniors managing high blood pressure, something is going catastrophically wrong during those hours. And nobody is checking. I am going to show you exactly what that is. I am going to explain the biology behind it in a way that will make complete sense to you. And then I'm going to give you a 2-ingredient bedtime drink that attacks your nighttime blood pressure through 2 completely separate biological pathways, simultaneously, while you sleep. One ingredient drops pressure by up to 7 points. The other adds 3 to 4 more points on top of that. Combined, they force your arteries to relax through the entire night and blunt the single most dangerous cardiovascular window in a hypertensive senior's day. I will give you the exact ingredients, the exact dose, the exact preparation, and the exact timing. But I am also going to show you 4 things that will completely destroy this drink's effect. One of them is in your medicine cabinet right now. One is in your pantry. One is on your kitchen counter. And one is almost certainly on your nightstand as you watch this. If you do not eliminate these 4 things, it does not matter what you drink before bed. The damage will continue every single night. Stay with me through this entire video, because I am going to start with a story about a man I will call Douglas, and what happened to Douglas at 4:30 in the morning, despite his doctor telling him every 6 months for 6 years that his blood pressure was perfectly controlled. Douglas was 69 years old. He had spent 40 years as a commercial photographer, a precise, patient, deeply careful man who noticed details that other people walked past without seeing. When Douglas was diagnosed with high blood pressure at 63, he approached it the same way he approached every problem in his life, methodically, precisely, without shortcuts. He took his medication every morning at the exact same time, without missing a single dose in 6 years. He walked 30 minutes every single evening after dinner, regardless of the weather. He attended every checkup appointment without fail. Every 6 months, the nurse would wrap the cuff around his arm at 2 in the afternoon. The reading came back the same every single time, 126/80. His doctor would look at the chart and nod warmly. "Douglas," he would say, "you are a model patient. Keep doing exactly what you are doing." And Douglas did keep doing exactly what he was doing. What his doctor did not know, and what nobody knew, and what Douglas himself had no idea about, was what was happening inside his arteries between midnight and 5 in the morning. Douglas had a routine his doctor had never once asked about. Every night at around 9 o'clock, he poured himself a glass of red wine. Just 1 glass, he always told himself. He had read somewhere that red wine was good for the heart. He took 400 milligrams of ibuprofen for the chronic ache in his right shoulder, an old injury from decades of carrying heavy camera equipment. The ibuprofen let him sleep without the pain pulling him awake, and he fell asleep with the television on because he liked the background noise. It helped him relax. His wife had mentioned the snoring. She described it as loud enough to rattle the window. She had started keeping earplugs on her nightstand. Douglas figured it was just age, just one of those things. At 2 in the afternoon, Douglas's blood pressure was 126/80. At 3 in the morning, Douglas's blood pressure was almost certainly 168/102. Nobody had ever measured it. Nobody had ever looked. On the morning of March the 4th, the morning surge hit at 4:45. His wife woke to a heavy, sudden movement on his side of the bed. She reached for the lamp. When the light came on, Douglas was staring at the ceiling. The left side of his face had gone completely slack. His left arm was pressed flat against the mattress. He was trying to say her name, but the sound coming out was not language. It was just sound. She called for emergency services immediately. The paramedics arrived in 9 minutes. 9 minutes is fast. But in a stroke, every single minute of interrupted blood flow costs roughly 1.9 million brain cells. Douglas survived, but the stroke took his color vision. The man who spent 40 years making his living by seeing color, who could distinguish 250 shades of white, who built an entire career on the relationship between light and hue, now sees the world in gray. He cannot work. He cannot do the thing that defined him for 4 decades. His doctor was not negligent. His doctor was measuring a number at the wrong time of day and calling it complete information. This video exists because of Douglas, and because of the dozens of patients like him, whose daytime numbers looked perfect, while their nighttime biology was destroying them from the inside. Now I am going to explain exactly what was happening in Douglas's body every single night, because the drink I am about to give you only makes complete sense once you understand the biology underneath it. This is called nocturnal dipping, and if you have never heard this term, you need to understand it today. During the day, your sympathetic nervous system runs the show. It keeps you alert, functional, and responsive. As part of that job, it keeps your blood vessels in a state of mild constriction. Your blood pressure stays elevated enough to deliver oxygen and fuel to your organs and muscles on demand. When you fall asleep, something critical is supposed to happen. Your body shifts from sympathetic control to parasympathetic control. Your heart rate slows. Your breathing deepens. The constriction in your blood vessels releases, and your blood pressure drops. This overnight drop is called nocturnal dipping. In a healthy adult, blood pressure falls by 10 to 20% during sleep. If your daytime pressure is 130/80, your nighttime pressure should fall to around 110/65, sometimes lower. This is not optional biology. This nightly pressure reduction is when your heart muscle rests, when your kidneys repair their filtering membranes, when your arterial walls recover from the mechanical stress of a full day of pumping. The lowest point of this pressure curve happens between 2 and 3 in the morning. That 2-hour window is your body's most important cardiovascular maintenance window of the entire day. But here is what research has consistently shown about seniors managing high blood pressure. Up to 50% of them do not dip. Their pressure at 2 in the afternoon is 135/85. Their pressure at 2 in the morning is 135/85. Flat. No dip, no recovery, no repair. Just continuous, relentless pressure on the heart, the kidneys, and the arterial walls. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. This pattern is called non-dipping, and research published in the European Heart Journal has shown that non-dippers carry a 300% higher risk of cardiovascular death than people whose pressure dips normally at night. 300% higher risk, felt by no one, measured by almost no one. You feel nothing. You sleep through the whole thing. You wake up in the morning, perhaps a little more tired than usual, perhaps with a dull ache at the base of your skull that you have learned to dismiss as just part of getting older. And you take your morning medication and walk your 30 minutes and believe you are doing everything right, because at 2 in the afternoon, you are. Your number looks excellent. The system is satisfied, and the real problem continues in the dark. Now there is an even more dangerous pattern affecting approximately 10 to 15% of hypertensive seniors. Instead of staying flat at night, their blood pressure actually rises while they sleep. This is called reverse dipping, and it is almost always the fingerprint of undiagnosed sleep apnea. In sleep apnea, the airway collapses during sleep. Breathing stops. Oxygen levels drop. The brain detects the crisis and triggers an emergency alarm. Adrenaline floods into the bloodstream. Blood pressure spikes. This can happen 30, 40, 50 times in a single hour. Each episode is a cardiovascular crisis. Each spike drives pressure against arterial walls that were already weakened from years of hypertension. And because it happens while the person is unconscious, they have absolutely no awareness of it. Douglas snored loudly enough that his wife had moved to a separate room. That snoring was almost certainly the sound of his airway collapsing and recovering, over and over, all night long, while adrenaline surged through his blood vessels in the dark. Reverse dipping is the leading predictor of strokes that happen during sleep. Now I need you to understand the morning surge, because this is the event that directly precedes most overnight strokes. And once you understand it, you will never look at the hours between 4 and 6 in the morning the same way again. Between 4 and 6 in the morning, your body begins preparing to wake up. Cortisol starts rising. The sympathetic nervous system begins to reactivate. Alpha adrenergic receptors in the arterial walls start responding. Blood pressure rises, quickly, sharply, and with considerable force. This is the morning surge, and it is why the highest concentration of heart attacks and strokes in the entire day clusters between 6 and 10 in the morning. In a healthy dipper, the morning surge starts from a safe, rested baseline. Nighttime pressure was 110. The surge carries them to 125, maybe 130. Their arteries handle this without incident. The vessels are flexible. The plaques, if any are present, are stable. But in a non-dipper, the surge begins from a dangerous baseline. If nighttime pressure never dropped below 140, the surge carries them to 170, sometimes 180, before they have even opened their eyes. In a reverse dipper like Douglas, it is worse. Pressures can reach 190 or beyond before the first waking breath. At those pressure levels, unstable arterial plaques rupture, clots form in seconds. Blood flow to critical brain tissue stops. Douglas's medication worked beautifully during the day, but by midnight, its peak effect had passed. The wine he drank every evening created a pleasant vasodilatory effect for 2 hours, and then triggered a sharp sympathetic rebound at 2 in the morning, right when his pressure should have been at its absolute lowest. The ibuprofen had been quietly blocking his kidney enzymes all night, keeping his blood volume artificially elevated, and his airway was collapsing dozens of times per hour, each collapse triggering another adrenaline surge that his arteries had no capacity left to absorb. His daytime reading said controlled. His nighttime biology was building toward catastrophe, one night at a time, for 6 years. Now I am going to give you the drink. I have held it until this moment deliberately, because if I had started with 2 ingredients, you would have written them down, tried them for a few nights, and had no framework for understanding why they work, or why the 4 saboteurs I am about to describe will cancel everything if you don't address them. Understanding the biology is not background noise. It is the reason this works. The drink has 2 ingredients, and each one addresses a completely different biological pathway driving your nighttime blood pressure. One works from the top down, through your brain and nervous system. The other works from the bottom up, directly at the arterial wall. Together, they create a coordinated, sustained reduction in pressure that covers your entire sleep window and reaches its peak effect precisely during the most dangerous hours of the night. The first ingredient is Montmorency tart cherry juice concentrate. Not sweet cherry juice, not a cherry cocktail, not a cherry-flavored drink. Montmorency tart cherries, specifically. This distinction matters more than it might seem. The Montmorency variety contains a measurably higher concentration of phytomelatonin than virtually any other food source. Phytomelatonin is the plant-produced form of melatonin, the same signaling molecule your own brain produces to initiate sleep. But the melatonin in a pill is synthetic. The melatonin in Montmorency tart cherry juice is natural, bioavailable, and packaged with other compounds in the fruit that enhance its entry across the blood-brain barrier. Here is what happens when you drink it approximately 1 hour before sleep. The phytomelatonin is absorbed through the gut and enters the bloodstream. Within roughly 45 minutes, it crosses the blood-brain barrier and reaches a structure called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This is your body's master circadian clock. It governs when you sleep and when you wake, based on light signals and neurochemical inputs. When melatonin arrives at this structure, it sends a descending signal down the spinal cord to the sympathetic nerve fibers running throughout your body, including the ones wrapped around your arteries. The signal says, "Stand down. The fret period is over. Stop flooding the system with stress chemistry." The sympathetic nerve endings that have been releasing norepinephrine all day, the chemical that tells your arterial smooth muscle to contract and squeeze, begin to go quiet. Without that norepinephrine signal, your arterial smooth muscle has no instruction to remain contracted. The tension releases, the vessels dilate, blood pressure begins to fall. This is precisely the mechanism your body uses to create nocturnal dipping under normal circumstances. The tart cherry juice restores and reinforces that signal, particularly in seniors whose natural melatonin production has declined with age, which is a documented and extremely common change in the senior body. A clinical study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition tested Montmorency tart cherry concentrate in a controlled group of men with early-stage hypertension. 60 milliliters of concentrate in a single dose produced a peak systolic reduction of 7 points compared to placebo. 7 points from cherry juice in one dose. But the tart cherry does something else that is equally important. It contains high concentrations of compounds called anthocyanins. These are the pigments that give the cherries their deep red color, and they perform 2 additional functions in the vascular system overnight. First, they stimulate the endothelial cells lining the inside of your arteries to increase their production of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is the molecule that signals arterial smooth muscle to relax and keeps vessels dilated. More nitric oxide means more sustained arterial relaxation through the night. Second, the anthocyanins act as protective agents for the nitric oxide already circulating in your blood. Your bloodstream contains oxidative molecules that destroy nitric oxide before it can reach the arterial wall and do its job. The anthocyanins neutralize those destroyers. They guard the nitric oxide so it lasts longer and works harder. So the tart cherry juice is doing 3 things simultaneously: shutting off the sympathetic signal that keeps your arteries contracted, increasing production of the molecule that tells your arteries to relax, and protecting that molecule from being destroyed before it reaches its target, all through the night while you sleep. Now the second ingredient, and the reason these 2 together are significantly more powerful than either one alone: magnesium glycinate. Not magnesium oxide, not magnesium citrate, magnesium glycinate specifically. And I am going to explain precisely why the form matters. Because the wrong form of magnesium will not lower your blood pressure. It will send you to the bathroom at 2 in the morning with severe gastrointestinal cramping. And that is the last thing anyone needs. To understand why magnesium glycinate lowers blood pressure, you need to understand how arterial smooth muscle contracts. For the muscle cell wrapped around your artery to shorten and squeeze the vessel, it needs calcium. Calcium ions flow from outside the cell through structures in the cell membrane called voltage-gated calcium channels. When enough calcium enters, the muscle fibers contract. The vessel squeezes, blood pressure rises. This is the exact same mechanism targeted by an entire class of pharmaceutical blood pressure drugs called calcium channel blockers. Amlodipine, diltiazem, verapamil. These drugs work by blocking those calcium channel doorways. Without calcium entry, the muscle cannot contract. The vessel stays relaxed. Magnesium performs an equivalent function naturally. Magnesium ions compete directly with calcium ions for access to those voltage-gated channels. When sufficient magnesium is circulating in the bloodstream, it occupies the channels before calcium can enter. The calcium ion arrives at the doorway and finds it blocked. It cannot get through. The muscle cell cannot receive the contraction signal. The artery stays open. This is why magnesium is described in cardiovascular research as nature's calcium channel blocker. It is not a metaphor. The mechanism is directly parallel. A meta-analysis published in the journal Hypertension examined 22 independent clinical trials covering more than 1,100 patients. Magnesium supplementation produced an average reduction of 3 to 4 points systolic and 2 to 3 points diastolic. 3 to 4 points on top of the 7 from the tart cherry. That is a combined reduction of 10 to 11 points in systolic pressure from two ingredients working through entirely different biological pathways while you sleep. Now, magnesium glycinate specifically, and not any other form. Magnesium oxide is the cheapest and most widely available form. You will find it in most pharmacies. It is also the least bioavailable. The gut absorbs very little of it. What it does absorb happens rapidly and irritates the gut lining. If you take magnesium oxide before bed, you will not lower your blood pressure. You will spend the night in the bathroom. Magnesium glycinate is magnesium bound to the amino acid glycine. Glycine slows absorption, allowing the magnesium to move through the gut gradually and completely with no gastrointestinal side effects. Bioavailability is substantially higher. The full dose reaches the bloodstream and the arterial wall. And here is the bonus. Glycine itself has documented calming effects on the central nervous system. It acts on glycine receptors in the brain that reduce neurological arousal and promote deeper, more restorative sleep. The glycine is not just a carrier molecule. It is a coactive ingredient that deepens the parasympathetic shift the tart cherry juice initiates. Here is the exact preparation. You need 100% Montmorency tart cherry concentrate. The only ingredient on the label should be tart cherry juice or tart cherry concentrate. No apple juice, no grape juice, no added sweeteners, no high fructose corn syrup. If any of those appear on the label, put it back. Added sugar will trigger an insulin response before sleep that instructs your kidneys to retain sodium. And that sodium retention will partially cancel the benefit of everything else in the drink. You need magnesium glycinate powder or capsules. Check the label carefully, because many products list the total compound weight rather than the elemental magnesium content. You want 300 milligrams of elemental magnesium. Take a glass. Add 6 ounces of cold or room temperature water. Do not use hot water. Heat degrades both the phytomelatonin and the anthocyanins in the cherry juice, reducing the effective dose. Add 2 tablespoons, which is 30 milliliters, of the tart cherry concentrate. Add the magnesium glycinate. Stir thoroughly until completely dissolved. Drink this 45 to 60 minutes before you plan to fall asleep. Do not eat food with it. An empty stomach allows the phytomelatonin to cross the blood-brain barrier more rapidly. Food in the stomach slows gastric emptying and delays absorption. You want the melatonin reaching your brain roughly 45 minutes after you drink it, so the sympathetic withdrawal is already underway before you enter deep sleep. 10 seconds of preparation, 45 minutes of onset, 8 hours of protection. Now, the 4 things that will completely destroy this drink's effect. And I want you to take these seriously, because even one of them, left in place, can significantly reduce or eliminate the benefit of everything we have just covered. The first saboteur is in your medicine cabinet. Look at your pain relief options for this evening. If ibuprofen, naproxen, or any other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory is something you take in the evenings for joint pain, back pain, knee pain, or any chronic discomfort, you are locking your nighttime blood pressure into an artificially elevated position, regardless of everything else you do. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs block an enzyme called cyclooxygenase in the kidney. That enzyme produces vasodilatory prostaglandins that are part of the kidney's internal system for regulating sodium and water balance. When you block them, the kidney shifts into aggressive sodium retention mode. Sodium stays in the blood, water follows sodium, blood volume expands, and higher blood volume means higher pressure. The kidneys cannot compensate because the very mechanism they use to compensate has been pharmacologically blocked. NSAIDs taken in the evening can actively raise systolic blood pressure by 3 to 5 points on their own, with their peak pressure effect landing right in the middle of your overnight window. Douglas took 400 milligrams of ibuprofen every single evening for his shoulder. His doctor knew about the shoulder. His doctor did not know about the nightly ibuprofen, and nobody ever made the connection. If you need evening pain relief, speak with your physician about acetaminophen. It does not share the kidney prostaglandin blocking mechanism. It provides genuine pain relief without the vascular consequences of overnight NSAID use. The second saboteur is in your pantry. Think about what you ate last night between 8 and 10 in the evening while you are watching television. If it was pretzels, crackers, salted nuts, chips, popcorn, or any packaged snack food, you introduced a sodium load into your system at the exact time your kidneys are least equipped to process it. When you lie down to sleep, renal blood flow distribution changes, and your kidney's capacity to excrete a large sodium load is substantially reduced. The sodium you consumed at 9 in the evening is sitting in your bloodstream at midnight, pulling water with it by osmosis, expanding blood volume, and keeping your arteries under pressure during the window when they are supposed to be resting. Stop eating by 7 in the evening. If the urge to eat something after dinner is genuinely strong, a small handful of unsalted walnuts provides potassium that counteracts sodium's blood volume effect, without adding a new sodium load into your overnight window. The third saboteur is on your kitchen counter or in your bar cabinet. The evening drink, the wine, the whiskey, the beer before bed. The nightcap that millions of seniors have practiced for decades and genuinely believe is harmless or even good for the heart. Here is the biology that explains why it is neither. Alcohol is biphasic. It produces two distinct and opposite effects in sequence. During the first 1 to 2 hours after you drink it, alcohol acts as a vasodilator. Your blood vessels relax. You feel calm and warm and pleasantly drowsy. Your blood pressure actually drops a little. This is why the nightcap feels like it is helping. The experience is real. But around 2 in the morning, as your liver has metabolized the alcohol and is now processing its primary metabolite, a compound called acetaldehyde, something completely different happens. The vasodilatory effect reverses. Your sympathetic nervous system fires back into full activity. Adrenaline enters the bloodstream. Heart rate increases. Blood vessels constrict. Blood pressure rebounds sharply. This rebound happens at precisely the time your blood pressure should be at its absolute lowest. The 2 to 3 in the morning window when your cardiovascular system is supposed to be doing its deepest repair work. Instead of a safe, rested baseline, your arteries are experiencing a sympathetic surge driven by alcohol metabolism. This pattern is not sensitive to the amount consumed. A single glass of wine creates the same biphasic sequence. The magnitude is smaller, but the timing and direction of the rebound are identical. Douglas's 2 fingers of scotch every evening felt like relaxation. What it was doing was building a chemical time bomb set to detonate at 2 in the morning, every single night. No alcohol after 6 in the evening. Replace the nightcap ritual with the tart cherry drink at 9. Instead of a false relaxation, followed by a sympathetic rebound at 2 in the morning, you are creating a genuine, sustained sympathetic withdrawal that deepens as the night progresses and reaches its peak protection precisely when the morning surge begins. The fourth saboteur is on your nightstand or in your hands right now. The screen, your phone, your tablet, the television in the bedroom, the blue light emitted by every modern digital screen falls in the wavelength range that your retina uses to signal the pineal gland in your brain that it is daytime. The pineal gland responds by suppressing melatonin production. When you look at a phone screen at 9:30 at night, your pineal gland genuinely believes it is midday. Melatonin production stops. The sympathetic nervous system stays active. The cascade that produces nocturnal dipping cannot begin. The tart cherry juice provides phytomelatonin that partially compensates for this suppression, but partially is the operative word. You are adding melatonin from outside while simultaneously blocking your brain's natural melatonin production from the inside. You are asking one factor to compensate for another that is actively working against it. No screens from 9 o'clock onward. Dim the lights from 8. The darkness tells your pineal gland to begin natural melatonin production. The tart cherry drink adds to that production from outside. The combined signal is substantially stronger than either alone. Now let me tell you about someone who turned this around. Constance was 64 years old, a retired emergency room nurse who had spent 31 years working night shifts. If anyone understood the clinical language of blood pressure management, it was Constance. She had administered antihypertensive medications in crisis settings more times than she could count. She understood the pharmacology. She understood the risks. What she did not understand was what was happening in her own body while she slept. 31 years of night shifts had destroyed her circadian rhythm. Even in retirement, her body did not know when to sleep and when to wake. She slept poorly. She woke frequently. Every single morning she woke with a dull, heavy pressure at the base of her skull that she had attributed to poor sleep for so long that she had stopped thinking of it as a symptom at all. Her daytime blood pressure was 147/92, despite taking medication. Her physician was considering adding a second drug. Constance had spent 3 decades watching elderly patients on 5 and 6 blood pressure medications. She had administered those medication lists in emergency situations and seen what happened when they interacted with other drugs in a crisis. She did not want that to be her future. She bought a home blood pressure monitor and kept it on her nightstand. One night, she woke at 3 in the morning to use the bathroom, which was itself a nightly occurrence she had also completely stopped questioning. On an impulse, she put the cuff on before she got out of bed. She pressed the button. 158/97. She sat with that number for a long moment. At 3 in the morning, when it should have been at its lowest, her nighttime pressure was higher than her daytime reading. As a nurse who had spent 31 years in emergency medicine, she knew exactly what that number meant. She began researching. She found the published studies on Montmorency tart cherry concentrate. She found the meta-analysis on magnesium supplementation and blood pressure. She recognized the mechanisms immediately because she had studied vascular pharmacology. She understood calcium channel blocking. She understood the relationship between sympathetic withdrawal and nocturnal dipping. And she recognized that these two ingredients were addressing those mechanisms through entirely natural pathways. She made 3 changes in the same week. She stopped eating her late evening crackers and cheese that she had been having in front of the television every night for years. She stopped watching television in the bedroom, and she started the bedtime drink. 2 tablespoons of Montmorency tart cherry concentrate, 300 milligrams of magnesium glycinate, cold water, 45 minutes before sleep. In the first week, something happened that she had not expected. The 3 in the morning bathroom visit stopped. And this needs an explanation, because many seniors watching this right now make that same nighttime bathroom trip, and many have been told it is simply a normal part of aging. It is not always a normal part of aging. It is frequently a symptom of nocturnal hypertension. When your blood pressure is elevated during sleep, your kidneys sense the increased pressure and attempt to compensate by excreting water. This process is called pressure natriuresis. The kidneys produce urine at an accelerated rate. You wake up needing to urinate, repeatedly, all night. When Constance's nighttime pressure dropped, her kidneys stopped triggering that emergency water clearance. They no longer needed to. She slept through the night, for the first time in what she estimated was several years. In week 2, she checked her 3 in the morning reading again. 141/88. Elevated, but dropping, measurably, unmistakably. In week 3, the morning headaches faded. She had attributed those headaches to poor sleep for so long that she had completely dissociated them from blood pressure. But the morning headache of nocturnal hypertension is a documented symptom. When the overnight pressure drops, the headache resolves. At the end of 8 weeks, she brought her home log to her physician. 8 weeks of morning readings, all between 115 and 123 systolic. Her physician looked at the numbers, looked at Constance, and asked what she had changed. She explained the drink, the timing, the 4 saboteurs she had eliminated. Her physician reduced her medication dose by half. Constance is still on that half dose today. The morning headaches are gone. The bathroom trips are gone. She told me that she had spent so long feeling like retirement was supposed to feel like slow decline that she had accepted a diminished version of herself without even realizing it. The drink gave her back the version of herself that had always been there, waiting behind the numbers no one had thought to check at 3 in the morning. Now let me answer the questions I know are forming in your mind. If I drink something before bed, won't I spend the night going to the bathroom? That concern is completely understandable, but it is backwards. High nighttime blood pressure causes frequent urination, not the other way around. Your kidneys produce excess urine at night, specifically in response to elevated pressure, trying desperately to reduce blood volume. When the drink lowers your nighttime pressure, your kidneys stop triggering that emergency response. Most people report fewer bathroom trips after beginning this protocol, not more. The drink itself is 6 ounces of liquid, less than 1 cup. That is not sufficient volume to cause additional trips. Second question. I am already on blood pressure medication. Is this safe? Yes, and here is why this matters. Most blood pressure medications are designed to be taken in the morning. They peak in the afternoon and gradually decline over 24 hours. By 3 in the morning, for many long-acting medications, you are in the trough of their effectiveness curve. The protective effect is at its lowest, precisely during the most dangerous window of the night. This drink fills that gap. It works while your medication is in its trough. It provides coverage through the overnight window that the medication was never designed to fully cover on its own. It is complementary, not competitive. If your morning blood pressure readings drop consistently after beginning this protocol, show your home log to your physician. They may consider adjusting your dosage. That is the outcome you want, not more medications. Better coverage with potentially fewer or lower dose medications. Third question. Does tart cherry juice have too much sugar? 2 tablespoons of Montmorency tart cherry concentrate contains approximately 15 grams of natural fruit carbohydrates. That is comparable to eating half a small apple. It does not produce the glycemic spike of a bowl of cereal or a glass of orange juice. And magnesium glycinate has a documented beneficial effect on glucose metabolism that partially offsets even the mild insulin response the natural sugars produce. The metabolic cost of 15 grams of natural fruit carbohydrate is not comparable to another night of uncontrolled nocturnal hypertension. Every additional night of elevated overnight blood pressure is another night of mechanical stress on your arterial walls, your cardiac muscle, and your kidney filtration membranes. Fourth question. My doctor has never mentioned nighttime blood pressure. Is it really that significant? Consider this. The Hygia chronotherapy trial followed over 19,000 patients for more than 6 years. It found that simply switching blood pressure medication timing from morning to bedtime reduced the risk of major cardiovascular events by 45%. The same drug, the same dose, different timing, 45% reduction. The entire premise of that finding rests on the recognition that nighttime blood pressure is independently critical, and that covering the overnight window specifically changes outcomes in ways that daytime management alone cannot achieve. Your physician has 15 minutes with you in a clinical appointment. They measure your blood pressure once, at whatever time your appointment falls. They review medications. They address concerns. They document the visit. The system is not indifferent to nocturnal blood pressure. It is simply not structured to routinely capture it. These are different problems with different solutions. You can begin gathering your own data tonight. Buy a home blood pressure cuff if you do not already have one. Set an alarm for 3 a.m, one night this week. Take your reading before you get out of bed. If that number is higher than your afternoon reading, or even close to it, you are either a non-dipper or a reverse dipper. And everything in this video applies directly to your health in ways your last dozen appointments were not able to capture. Here is the complete evening protocol. Everything in sequence with the timing that makes the biology work. At 7 p.m, stop eating. This is the single change with the highest impact on your sodium balance entering the night. At 8 p.m, no more alcohol and no more NSAIDs. If you need evening pain management, take acetaminophen before 8, so it is active when you need it, without the overnight kidney consequences of an NSAID. At 9 p.m, prepare and drink the bedtime mixture. 2 tablespoons of Montmorency tart cherry concentrate, 300 milligrams of elemental magnesium glycinate, 6 ounces of cold water. Stir thoroughly, drink it slowly. Dim the lights in your home. From 9 o'clock onward, no screens. Turn off the television, the phone, the tablet. Let the darkness do its job. Your pineal gland is waiting for this signal. The melatonin it begins producing will combine with the phytomelatonin from the drink to create a signal that is substantially more powerful than either alone. At 10 p.m, sleep. That is the complete protocol. 5 steps. No prescription required. No special equipment. 10 seconds of active preparation. What it requires is consistency. The benefit of magnesium glycinate on vascular smooth muscle deepens over weeks as tissue levels rise. The anthocyanin upregulation of endothelial nitric oxide production is a gradual process that compounds with repeated doses. The first night, you will sleep better. The first week, you will notice changes in your morning readings. The first month, you will have the kind of data that Constance brought to her physician's attention. And if you keep that log carefully, you will walk into your next appointment holding information your physician has never seen from you before. A complete picture of what your blood pressure is actually doing, not just at 2 p.m, but through the night and in the morning before you rise. I want to say something directly before we close. I cannot be in the room with you at 4 a.m. I cannot be there when the morning surge hits. I cannot check your numbers when you are unconscious. But I have seen what uncontrolled nocturnal hypertension does to people who were, by every daytime measure, doing everything right. Douglas cannot hold a camera anymore. His hands still know the motions. Muscle memory does not disappear with a stroke, but the color vision that defined his work, that built his life, that was the way he saw the world, is permanently gone. That outcome was not inevitable. It was the product of a gap between the information the system provided and the information his biology actually required. The drink I have given you today fills one part of that gap. It addresses the overnight window that the prescription pad and the afternoon appointment were never designed to cover. 2 tablespoons of tart cherry concentrate, 300 milligrams of magnesium glycinate, 45 minutes before bed, no food, no alcohol after 6, no NSAIDs in the evening, no screens after 9. Tonight, before you close your eyes, make the drink. Tomorrow morning, before you get out of bed, take your reading. Write it down. Do that for 1 week. Then come back and leave your numbers in the comments. Tell me what your morning readings were before you started and what they are now. I read every single comment because the next person this information needs to reach may not know to look for it. They may be doing everything right inside an incomplete system, watching the number refuse to move, not knowing that the real number is the one that happens while they sleep. If you know someone like that, share this video with them today. Not as a general suggestion, as a specific piece of biology that applies directly to their situation. And the next video in this series covers the morning window, the hours between 6 and 10 when most cardiovascular events occur. 7 specific foods that continue the protection this drink begins. Foods that target the morning surge and reduce the arterial stress of the most dangerous hours in a hypertensive senior's day. If you want 24-hour protection, not just overnight protection, the morning protocol is the second half of that system. Click the next video now. I will see you there.